Hello adventurers, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to go check out something pretty cool that I have to tell you, when I pulled around the corner I saw it from a distance and was just like, wow, this place is huge. Well, today we're visiting the Missouri Mine, and this is a historic site that you're not going to want to miss because it's going to give us some brain wrinkles. There's a small museum here and I don't know exactly what we can do, but we're about to find out, and you're coming with me. Let's go. It's a little harder to see, but this is dedicated to the miners who lost their lives in the mining industry of Missouri. Nestled deep within the eastern Ozarks is an area known as the Old Lead Belt, a major part of the great southeast Missouri Lead District, the premier lead mining district of the world. The mining industry in this area has played an important role in Missouri's economic and social fabric for more than 280 years. Missouri Mine State Historic Site preserves the historically significant structures and artifacts of the largest mine mill complex in the Old Lead Belt and interprets the historic role of mineral resources and the mining industry in Missouri. The demand for lead resulted in an economic development which brought major corporate enterprises, deep multi-leveled underground mines, sophisticated underground railroads, and the influx of thousands of workers into the Old Lead Belt. More than 1,000 miles of abandoned multi-level mine tunnels now lay just beneath the surface, and 300 miles of underground mainline railroad tracks connect various shafts and mills, and they are testimony of the 108 years of persistent mining operations in this area. Today, these mines flooded naturally with groundwater, and they provide a water supply for the Park Hills and also surrounding communities. In late 1975, the company donated Federal Mine Mill Complex along with its adjoining lands to Missouri for the use of a state park. The Missouri Department of Natural Resources took possession of the 8,244-acre tract in 1976 and subsequently naming it the St. Joe State Park. In 1980, the 25-acre mine and mill was designated a Missouri Mine State Historic Site. At its peak, the complex consisted of 25 buildings, including the powerhouse, head frame, and the primary crusher, as well as a mill, flotation plant, filter and drying building, machine shop, carpentry shop, sawmill, and electrical shop. Currently, the 19,000 square foot powerhouse is used as the Missouri Mining History and Mineral Resource Museum. We start off our adventure here in the museum section, and there was a short video of about 12 minutes that was filmed in the 50s telling exactly what this place did. And let me tell you, super fascinating, because I had never seen a mill of this kind, so to speak, or a mining group of this particular kind. This is talking more about how in more modern times they started to shift over to equipment and how they were able to extract lead from ore, and all the process of breaking it down, grinding it, floating it, and then finding galena, which ultimately becomes the lead. And so it's kind of fascinating. You have to watch this video for sure. But there's a lot more here, so I'm really excited to share with you the museum, and then we're going to go outside and explore a little bit so we can get some context. But before we do, one of the things that they mentioned on the video was that all of the things that you see on top are all part of the mill process. The mining process was 400 feet below the surface, and in that surface area, and on the surface here, they were doing all of the things that happened after, but there were two separate and very distinct crews of people, the ones who were above ground, the ones who were below ground, and each of them had their own things that they brought to the table in way of how that they would be able to do things. So currently we're above ground. Let's start out here. We can't go below ground, but if we could, there were 40 miles of extensive tunnels, and there were electric carts and lots of heavy machinery pieces. It was a whole city underground, basically. Kind of fascinating. Now, starting over from the beginning, to the left, whenever you walk into the museum, there is this huge gallery filled with all sorts of really impressive minerals. But there's also this map, and this map actually shows you that Missouri has 6 natural divisions, and they're each marked by a different color based on a combination of geological history, soils, bedrock geology, topography, plants and animal distribution. This is how they create these individual districts. Now, why does this matter? Well, each of these districts has different mineral content based on the ground below it, and you can see that from overhead based on the more forested areas or the more plains regions. Based on the color that you're seeing, that reflects that. But there's so much more here to learn, and so as we kind of go through, I'm going to show you some of the cases, but I encourage you guys to come here because this is extensive. There's no way I can share it all, but I can show you a little bit. This is the Federal Mill number 3 in 1907. Now, the video we just watched was from the 50s, but this place was here long before that. In fact, before the age of technology where they had the electric carts, they were still using mules in the tunnels. Just to give context as to what part of the state we're in, we are right here in this region, which, as you can see, includes the St. Louis area and several other really interesting historic sites as well as state parks. Scattered around the museum, you can find historic photos, and you can really get an idea as to what it would have been like to be underground in those tunnels. Now, unlike many of the places that we've been to, the structure below ground was not supported by timbers. In fact, the way that they created these very large tunnels, they used pillars, huge pillars, and these pillars were natural pillars of the bedrock that was below, and they didn't hollow out big open spaces and then build up supports. Rather, they went through and made sure they had natural supports to hold up the 400 feet of ground atop them. And in doing so, it opened up a lot more possibilities, and also they had fewer issues with this system than they did in many of the timber mines. Now, inside the museum, we also learn about core drilling and learning about what is below. And there's a little illustration here where you can see what it looks like whenever they drill down, but also what some of these core cutaways look like. And they have various core cutaways from different sections as you go down. But in addition, they have all sorts of cool fossils which have been found here in Missouri as a result of them just digging around in the ground looking for things. And some of these are absolutely spectacular. Like, do you see the detail on this sea urchin? That is insane. And then right beside that, they have chain coral. Of course, you couldn't go to a mining location without learning a little bit more about the geology and then also the minerals that are available. So in these cases along the wall where we just watched the video, that's what you find out about. But right above that, they have a very intriguing east to west cross section of southeast Missouri. And because context is everything, there is a schematic for the original powerhouse complex at Federal Mill number 3, where you can look inside and see what that building would have looked like. It's really easy to go to a state park and say, ooh, look, lots of places to camp, lots of recreation. But going to historic sites is a bit more intentional. You have to make yourself want to learn the things that are there and get the brain wrinkles. And by coming to places like this, you open up your horizons to understanding so much more of the world around us. And I think that that's the more fascinating part of places like this, which is why I come. This mineral collection is amazing. There's so many really nice pieces, and I'll just kind of show you a few of them that I think are beautiful, but beauty is subjective to each of us. So come here and find your favorites. And if you have been here, let me know in the comments what you thought about it. Now, we're currently at the change rooms, and this entire room contained lockers and large circular cement wash basins. It was in the change rooms that the mill workers would come and have all of their things so that they could have dry clothes. They could also wash off any of the things that might have come with them from the original area that they were in, based on if they were up top or down below. See, even though this building now is used as a museum, it was once part of the original site, and so as you're getting to see it in its new form, they're still celebrating its old form so we can get a better idea. And I really appreciate that, because a lot of times when you come to places like this, especially those who have gone and been defunct or closed, you don't get to see things like this. You just get to see a little sign and then look at it from a distance. But this site is a little bit different. You can come into this particular structure and have that context, but there's so much more. So let's go over to this side and see what else is here. no big deal, just a huge piece of petrified wood, some of the most beautiful petrified wood that I've seen in a while, and this one is from Arizona, so not too bad. This is polished, it's gorgeous, and it's on display here. Now this is always one of my favorite, the fluorescent minerals, and it's always in a dark room, so let's go inside. Okay, here we go. And usually there's a button. Looks like there is. Okay. Look at these. Can you imagine? Now, in addition to the fluorescent minerals, they also have a special exhibit while I'm here. It may not be here when you're here, but it is currently. And this is a special exhibit of old mining lamps. And you can see how they've changed throughout the years through this one small case. So we start off with the oil pan lamps from the 1750s to the 1900s, and then you move into candle holder lamps, and those were 1800s to 1900s. 1850 to 1915, they went with this oil wick unit, and then carbide containers, and then carbide cap lamps. Those look kind of interesting. Those were used up until the 40s. Then here we also have some oil wick torches, and then also some carbide hand lamps. And then when you get to this one kind of over here in the corner, this is more like what they use today with the more modern light. They do have some little pamphlets that you can pick up to learn a little bit more about the history, and I think that this is definitely something you should do. It's right as you walk into the museum, but in the opposite direction of the geology, we now have the mining equipment, and here we can get a better look at some of the things that they used in the process of mining. These are ore cars, and this is a 2.7 ton ore car. It tells you a little bit more about each of the pieces on the attached signs, but this one was used from the early 20s with the development of better transportation, the rotary dump, and the mechanized loading. So what they could do with this is actually put the ore into this and then dump it without having to detach from the other cars, and this made it much easier for them to move the ore from the bottom to the top more quickly. And believe it or not, each one of these is pretty cool to see. Some of them look a little worse for wear, others look like they're in a bit better shape, but this is so neat, and it puts into perspective not only what they are, but how they functioned. Like this one, which is actually a locomotive car. This locomotive alone, they would have at least 2 or 3 of these in each one of the mines. Of course, overhead we see everything is running off of a line, and that was by design. This one is a different kind of locomotive. This is a 6-ton. So 6-ton versus 13-ton. So you can see the difference in the size and also in the amount that it could haul and power. Now down below you see it ran on a rail system. So it ran on a rail so it could keep in line, and also so they could navigate through the pathways. And this was how they did almost everything going in, out, and around in the mines themselves. By design, this made everything much more efficient again. And so finding ways to pull the absolute most in the least amount of time was always the goal. And so you can see all of the hard work was done with the assistance of all of this equipment. And so it was a feat of engineering, to say the least, just to get to that point. Now, there are some really interesting things in here, including this wall, where if you watch it for a little while, it changes and shows you more and more of the scenes from the historic photos of the people who actually worked right in this very mine. And it's pretty fascinating because you get to see how the heavy equipment was used, but also how the people would have been working, and I think that that's always pretty fascinating. So I'm going to look around a little bit more and share a few more of these pieces with you, and then we'll head outside. Now, you probably heard me say lead and might have gone, oh, because we know a lot of things about lead these days that aren't always the best. So here they actually have a display breaking down lead for us to help us understand what all uses lead, why lead exists, and some of the more interesting facts. So we start off with storage batteries. One of the main uses of lead is to manufacture storage batteries, like the one that starts your family car. So there's not really any getting away from that. But also, they have leaded gasoline. And children should not be allowed to play in the dirt or dust of heavy traffic roads because of the lead content that could be potentially in these. Of course, lead in plumbing systems has been one, and many older homes use copper water pipes fitted together with lead soldering, and that means that there's lead in the water sometimes. And even down here, we see that those solders are used for a lot of different things, including stained glass. They've also used lead in some food and drink containers. And a lot of those, like pewter, for example, contain significant amounts of lead. Now, a huge question is, if you have these things and you touch them, is that instantly bad? Well, no. It can be, but no. They do not recommend, however, if you have leaded glass, leaded plates, porcelain that contains lead for like decorations, for you to actually consume food off of those. And they've learned that now with the technology that we have. So all of those things are fascinating things, but that's just the beginning. There's so much more. Here we learn about lead paint. And we've all heard the stories of lead paint. It wasn't until 1977 they realized that this was a problem, and they decided to do away with it. Lead-based paints are the leading cause of lead issues for actual people in everyday life, which is why if you live in an older home, you should have your home checked for lead-based paints. Yeah. Good times. But there are a few suggestions here when it comes to lead protection, and it includes protecting yourself and your family by being aware if there's chipping or flaking paint and keeping children away from high-risk areas, making sure that children do not chew on anything covered with lead paint or eat any paint fragments, and also keeping them away from areas that might be exposed to lead or anything like that. You should also wash any toys and stuffed animals pretty regularly, and they should wash their hands and faces before any kind of meals, naps, or bedtime. All of those things are things we should be doing anyway, so just protecting yourself with some common sense is very important. But if for any reason you or anyone you know is affected by lead in any way, shape, or form, please call the health department. They need to know that, and they can get you immediate help, and that would be very beneficial in the long run. Though not tourable by the human foot traffic, you can see where each of these buildings were, and as you drive around the complex, you have a map that tells you a little bit more about which buildings served which purposes. It is a relic that stands the test of time and shows us all a bit of Missouri history. I just made it back to the van. It's getting a little bit windy out there, so I wanted to show you what the buildings look like and what you can see. Now, you can't go through each and every one of these, and that's okay because the structure is not solid enough for humans to go and just explore all of the passageways. You'll notice around there's broken glass in the windows themselves. They have some heavy equipment in some of these still that probably would be a little bit problematic if we were to go in there and just start touching and playing. But I really appreciate the fact that we are able to come to this place and get some definite brain wrinkles here. Remember, guys, we're not here for a long time, but we are here for a good time, and coming to places like this and learning about the past is definitely that. Till next time, guys, bye!